You're listening to a webinar recording brought to you by Collaborate, Conversation and Community Connected by ASAE. The name of today's presentation is For Total Brand Success, Strengthen Employer Branding. My name is Atoka the Ashman Brew, and I'm Managing Director of Marketing and Strategic Communication for Nonprofit HR. Today I'm joined by my fellow presenters, Stephen Bradham, who is Senior Director of Marketing and Communication for American Health Law Association, Maureen Dubois, Senior Director of Human Resources at American Health Law Association, and Lori Kipnis, Managing Director for Strategy and Advisory at Nonprofit HR. Want to learn more about Nonprofit HR? Visit us online, www.nonprofithr.com. And learn more about American Health Law Association as well. Visit them at www.ahla.org. The agenda for this event is power-packed. You're going to learn about traditional marketing and HR employer branding approaches, AHLA's early journey in their employer branding initiatives. We're going to cover assessing, evaluating, and determining a new course, which is to attract, grow, and value your workforce. And finally, we'll cover some real-time examples of what AHLA is planning for the grow and value phase of the total life cycle for talent management. And now, here's access to partnering internally for total brand success.
First and foremost, one of the things that we really wanted to focus on is corporate branding as an idea in relation to employer branding. And really just considering that corporate branding really is that full consumer experience. It's what consumers see, it's what they hear, what they experience when they interact with the brand, both of the visual aspects of the brand all the way through the intangibles. On the flip side of that, employer branding really focuses on the full employee experience. So just like on the consumer branding or the corporate brand side, and you really want to know what's being heard and felt and perceived about the corporate brand, that's the same concept as being applied on the employer brand. So there's opinions from talent regarding the philosophies of the organization and their approach to talent management. That's all a part of the employee brand experience. We are going to go over some additional and important elements of employer branding and what makes a strong employer branding during this presentation.
I agree, Atogatha. For many HR professionals, employer branding is a core concept that's integrated as part of formal learning or HR certification. And there's that continuation of exposure to employer branding from an HR lens. As you come into the profession, work across the full employee life cycle, and certainly in the more traditional phase of the cycle tied to recruitment, onboarding, those talent acquisition activities.
And, from a marketing perspective, it's truly not a core concept of the marketeer's playbook when it comes to employer branding. It has to be deliberately approached, intentionally considered as something to learn more about from a marketing perspective, not just in terms of the visual aspects of employer branding, but how it relates throughout the entire employee life cycle. And so, again, that's what we're going to spend some time talking about today to reveal some things that might not be on the surface important or appear to be important to marketers, but nonetheless are very much so.
And, really just want to spotlight then that opportunity, the theme of, our conversation today to really collaborate between HR and marketing, because such an opportunity to spotlight your organizational culture, your core values, and the unique aspects that both employees perceive as well as value in working at your association.
And so one of the most important things to consider then is that there's a great opportunity for marketers and human resources professionals to understand where that collaboration opportunity is and how to create inroads to begin cultivating discussions around success for both the employer brand and also the corporate brand, making sure that there's full alignment for both of those things. So it's now time for us to talk about our first question. Time for you to be able to interact. And this question is, which you can then put your responses into the chat feature, is where is your association on the employer branding spectrum? So you'll see that there are 4 categories here. Just chime in on the chat feature with where you believe you all are. So if you are, advanced, you've been at this for years, you feel very solid, that your approach to employer branding as an association is there, then that's great. Just go ahead and plug in advanced. If you feel that you're on par with your competition, doesn't mean that you've made a lot of progress, but you certainly are ahead of most, and that's fine too. If you just know, hey, we need to get it together. Yep. And if you have, that we just haven't started, it's not on our radar, we don't really know what it is, we don't know what we're doing, then just go ahead and plug in what employer brand or what brand. Yep, coming in just exactly where we thought everyone would land. And that's because, especially from, an employer brand perspective and from a marketing perspective in collaboration with human resources, there's just so much to be discovered. And even when the employer brand is, you're feeling as if your employer brand is firing on all cylinders, there's still room for growth and for there to be an even better and stronger approach to it. And so this is important because it really does matter from, a talent attraction perspective. We know that job seekers are more likely to apply and engage with prospective employers if they see that their employer brand is being actively managed. And this is a stat that we're able to pull in from Glassdoor. We all know how Glassdoor plays a part in the employer reputation world. And then in terms of, what makes for a great employer brand, we wanted to spend some time talking about these things. First is, we want to talk about an employer value proposition. On our very next slide, we're going to be talking about the elements of a strong employer value proposition. So just know that that's one of the things that make for a great employer brand. A great employer brand really speaks loudly to the talent that you want to attract. It also repels the talent that you don't want to attract. So, it says what the brand is, and it also says what the brand is not. It reiterates the organization's, commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and creating workspaces and workplaces of belonging for your current and also prospective talent. And, it does offer an authentic reflection of the organization's culture. So whatever the organization's culture is and whatever is being written about, mentioned, stated, or shared, those two things are in complete alignment.
And it really allows for that opportunity to keep your organizational values alive and well, for it to be more than just on a one-pager, but for your values to be integrated throughout the talent management cycle in support of your employer brand. An opportunity to celebrate and highlight your employee experience, which can be pulled from pulse surveys, as we'll talk more about, and the feedback from your employee perceptions. This is also an opportunity in thinking about what really strengthens an employer brand to highlight some of the aspects of your policies, your benefits that are very genuine and in place. So an aspect like your work-life integration. If you're an association that allows for some ample leave policies, has a culture that on weekends or after hours, there's not heavy requirement to be on email. These are areas that you want to spotlight tied to your brand, your culture, and really help strengthen your employer brand, again, across that full talent management life cycle.
Right, and we're able to move on here to highlight some aspects of the employer value proposition concept. And there are some key elements to consider. The most important thing on the left side is to focus on the fact that it's an exchange statement. It clearly says that in exchange for your talent, your skills, your contribution to the organization and the communities that we serve, here is our exchange as an employer. For what we are able to offer you to join our and to stay and remain with our organization. It's a living concept. It's ever changing. As the organization matures and expands and contracts, so must the employee value proposition, so that it's a true statement that reflects reality. It also, clearly differentiates what it's like to be an employee for the association or organization in comparison to even your sister organizations or competitors.
And when you think about the key elements of your EVP and you see the list on the slide, we're encouraging you to think comprehensively and a bit outside of the box about some of these traditional elements. So when you spotlight compensation, if you have an established compensation strategy, and if you feel that as an organization you're paying above market or certainly in step with market, to be transparent around your pay practices and to reference where you are tied to market as a highlight of compensation. Also, kind of coming from that HR mindset of total compensation. So those elements between your leave policies, your retirement offering and any matching, your base salary, how you're talking about compensation, fully and comprehensively. Also on the benefit side, it's, sometimes easy to think of just those, traditional health benefits and retirement in a benefit offering list on a careers website. But thinking about what are some of the opportunities that staff at your association have for voice and influence? Where can they be part of working groups, committees, join projects outside of their team and department? What is the genuine access to executive leadership at your organization? Should that be spotlighted? That there's really that open door environment. What are some of the staff events? So thinking about some of those opportunities around feedback, participation, ability to add comments and suggestions, and for those to shape your association's initiative when you're thinking about how you speak to your overall benefits offering, and opportunities for candidates and employees to be able to grow when working at your association. And so we want to take a moment for another poll, and this is a bit of a different take from the first question. Wanted to get a sense of how consistently you're partnering and collaborating as HR and marketing. So if you can add your response to chat.
And that's great, Kim and Julie. We see your chat coming in. You both are. That's great. And also wanted to recognize Ellen's post about pulling total rewards through your employer brand. We're going to talk about that in the form of the value phase for the talent management lifecycle a little later in the presentation. Keep those comments coming into the chat feature on where you are in terms of collaborating or seeing collaboration between your human resources and marketing function. As we continue through this conversation, we wanted to share 5 reasons for greater collaboration between marketing and human resources. And number 1, left unattended to, it's just not going to form itself. And what's at stake is your employer brand, the ability to attract the talent that you want to attract, and the ability to retain and mature and grow the talent that you want to keep. It also, is putting, your corporate brand at stake as well, considering it's the people who work for the organization that are able to be beacons of light and share what it's like to be a part of that organization. It highlights, the strength of the employer, workplace, and Lori's going to speak, more to that. It's certainly, from a marketing and HR playbooks, perspective is just not part of the whole. So marketeers are playing with half of the playbook and may be able to really max out all of the general concepts of marketing when it comes to supporting the growth of the organization's advertising objectives regarding recruiting new talent and sharing objectives regarding the sharing of certain stories that might feature talent. But the rest of the playbook is just not there in terms of how it aligns with all aspects of talent management. And on the flip side, HR is also playing with a limited playbook because many times they have limited access to certain tools that would help them pull the employer brand concept all the way through. And in many cases, there are opportunities to collaborate with marketing on creating some value around some of the parts of the employer brand experience that just doesn't seem to make it to the light of day, though these are very important aspects. Finally, regarding maximizing recruitment dollars, it's so very important to just consider how the algorithms today, especially when it comes to digital advertising, continue to become a challenging thing to maneuver. And so every single dollar counts. And when there's just not a strong employer brand, a strong messaging approach around that employer brand, when that employee value proposition is not well aligned and positioned very well, then you really are losing dollars every day as a result of those inefficiencies.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Atogatha. We know from the Department of Labor that the cost of a hire that's not successful has been projected at 30% of that employee's first year earnings. So that's, costs that have gone into recruitment, that's potential risk to team morale, and potential risk to your brand and just the way in which you service your members, your clients. So it really just want to underscore that last bullet. And just to also speak to, the benefits of the collaboration really helps to keep your DEI initiatives and your strategy alive and well. So beyond your commitment to DEI that may be on a website, to be able to speak fully to your initiatives through your policies, your HR initiatives related to pay, to performance management. Again, that mindset of bringing it through the full talent management life cycle. But it's a great opportunity to infuse your initiatives that are at play into your career page more fully. We wanted to begin with the principles that you just heard around employer branding and speak to EVP, but we want to shift now to spotlight some recommended strategies and initiatives that HR and marketing can collaborate to integrate more fully across your talent management lifecycle. And so we're going to start with placing focus on the attract phase. So if you see the visual on the slide, we think about the talent management lifecycle in 3 key phases: attract, grow, and value. So to just spotlight attract, these are the activities that begin with the workforce planning. So HR's role in speaking with leadership and team and department heads in understanding their current and projected priorities. And based on that, what are the talent capabilities needed? What are the staffing structures needed? And as that's defined, working through that recruitment process. So identifying the positions needed, going through the recruitment process to when you've identified and selected, and that onboarding and integrating of a new hire into your organization. And so this is where we see employer branding living more traditionally, as far as where the activities align with recruitment specifically. And so what you're seeing and hearing from us is, emphasized by the quote on the slide, that employer branding doesn't stop at day 1 of the onboarding process, but we're really encouraging you in a collaborative way to think about how it continues through the life cycle.
Yes, and I wanted to acknowledge Julie's comment in the comment section. And you're absolutely right, Julie, in terms of considering what the future of work is going to be and where work will take place. And that's a huge part of employer branding moving forward in terms of messaging and being able to incorporate the organization's approach to how they are going to, create a workforce that is still able to be 100% productive, regardless of where they are and how they function. So thank you so much for that comment. This is important, for many, many reasons, but primarily we know that this is a priority for organizations. Nonprofit HR has surveyed nonprofits over many years, and for the past 4 years, we have conducted a nonprofit talent management priority survey. And one of the top 3 priorities that are consistently stated by organizations, associations across all mission types is that they have a key need to attract and hire diverse talent. And this is across the entire diversity spectrum. And so, this is not only, something that's a nice thing to do, but it's a business imperative.
So we wanted to take a moment in thinking about this attract phase of the cycle. And, in seeing from the earlier chat, the efforts that Julie, Nicole, and Alan have already taken, you may have already moved into some of these initiatives. And for others, this may be a great place to start in your collaboration between marketing and HR. So in thinking about how you're aligning your talent attraction priorities with your employer brand, one recommendation is to be thoughtful and intentional. If you have established core competencies, and often these can be core competencies across the full organization, sometimes associations have pull out core competencies that they may term management or leadership principles, but you want to make sure that you're integrating your competencies into the applicable job descriptions, as well as using this as an opportunity to integrate your organizational values. Again, as you heard us share earlier, just another opportunity to keep your organizational values more alive and well through the talent management life cycle, and just not living on a whiteboard or a one-pager, as we said.
Right, Laura. I could not agree more. And one place that you're able to pull some of these great things and messages and successes through is on an updated or a career page that you have either have the ability to update or create in total. And that, is a great opportunity to really just share inclusive messaging that is authentic about the organization's culture, the organization's approach to talent management, the organization's desire to have an engaged workforce. It's an opportunity to hear from leadership, to allow employees and also prospective candidates to see themselves as a part of the organization before they're actually an employee. It is also an opportunity for current employees to listen in for those things that are a priority and that are important. You get to highlight the things that are most important, those benefits that are most popular. You really also get to, share some staff stories or highlights from that employee experience. I mean, the sky is the limit in terms of a career page that can be created to reflect the employer brand and employee experience.
We also suggest that you offer training to your hiring managers. And for HR professionals on the call, this may be part of your standard process, but making sure there's time in the agenda to calibrate around common messaging, where you would want hiring managers to be spotlighting common messaging around your employer brand, how they're talking about benefits, again, with that more comprehensive mindset. So how they're speaking to feedback opportunities, how as a candidate, if you were hired, you'd have opportunities to offer and receive feedback at our association, how leave policies are shaped, what are staff events tied to the organizational culture. So being able to norm and calibrate around common messaging should be part of your hiring manager training. We also suggest that you take a look at your current applicant tracking system. Is it aligned with how you are talking about your brand? So if you are describing yourself as a nimble and dynamic association, and the role that you're hiring for is one that you're asking for someone to be able to roll up their sleeves and move from strategy to tactical activities, are you attracting that candidate, and are you true to that in your ATS? Meaning, if a candidate's first experience with your association is through a process that's quite cumbersome, bulky, or multi-clicks, you may want to think about assessing other standalone solutions for an ATS that allows for a more nimble process, can leverage a LinkedIn profile to stay true to how you're describing your brand.
Right. And, that just moves us to the during phase of the talent attraction phase of the talent management lifecycle. And, really when candidates are going through the process of interviewing, and you are reaching out to schedule interviews to those that you want to proceed through the hiring process or through the interview process, that's an opportunity to leverage some of the assets that have already been created, even for your external audiences. And that's also an opportunity to help the candidates, number one, prepare for the additional conversations that they may have with internal stakeholders. It's also an opportunity to really show that brand congruence, pulling in videos that you may have from your annual conference. If you're doing an annual conference or bringing your community or membership together in any way, letting them understand, what it's like to, go through a newsletter, have them understand the tone of the organization and the priorities that the organization may be communicating about, including a press release and a packet, and helping them understand this is what's a big deal to us. We care about this, and we wanted to share this with you because you should know that these are the things that we care about and the things that we celebrate publicly.
And, if in your collaborative meetings from a marketing end, if you're hearing that HR and your hiring managers are using job simulation activities for certain recruitment positions and processes, this is another opportunity to think about how in the prompt that's given to a candidate to describe the request of the activity, or how in the reference materials that accompany the activity itself, how can you also integrate your brand? Are there ways to bring in your values, your core competencies, other collateral about the organization? This helps from a candidate engagement perspective because it allows the candidate to continue to learn about your organization. And it helps from an internal side as far as, again, being able to support just a better cultural fit. So this is a great opportunity where marketing can also review the materials that are going out to candidates when a job simulation activity is used.
Right. And when you are, simulating activities, one of the things that's important to take note of is the various pieces of communication and messaging that needs to go out during that process of interviewing. And so any messages that are going to be sent out to candidates that are moving forward in the process, that is something that can be created as a template to share with hiring managers so that they're not trying to create messaging that might miss the mark in terms of the employer brand and even the corporate brand. And from the messaging that you might want to send out to offer an opportunity for interviews, the messaging that you might also want to send out to remove candidates from the or usher candidates out of the consideration process. Those are all messaging pieces that can be standardized, pulled on brand, and maximized to ensure that they're all in alignment with what you want to communicate about them not being considered or them being considered to move forward.
And, the final bullet that you're seeing under the during phase, we all know as HR, as marketing, we all know the importance of clarifying a search process and the steps and the timeline to candidates, yet it can often be missed just in high volume search processes and just with the pace of the day. So being more intentional, understanding that this is for many candidates, their first experience and exposure to your organization, and for all of us understanding the power of networks for future talent pipeline or other ways in which your candidates may be reconnecting with your association, respecting their time, helping with that transparency upfront, in sharing out how many interview stages are tied to this process, what are the anticipated timelines, keeping candidates updated if there's any delay in process. Again, just that impact to your brand and how that candidate experiences the recruitment process overall.
And so now we're going to hear from our colleagues at AHLA, and they're going to share some highlights of their talent attraction successes that they've been creating around employer branding.
Or talent attraction hurdles, as I may say. For AHLA, I think, our talent attraction is our biggest struggle. When we look at the overall employer branding piece of things, we've been very good at defining what our brand is, really focusing on sort of that employee side of it, but we haven't done a very good job of translating that message out to folks. We do the basic lists. We do have, attributes out in our job descriptions, and we have our benefits listed. I noticed Jennifer talking about automated messages. I agree with that one 100% because I hear from it often, but simple lift is just communicating and following up with those candidates who come in. So setting up that automated message. So, once a resume or once an application comes in, you're letting them know, hey, I saw you, we're going to look at it, we appreciate it, and we'll get back to you. And then get back to them. So I think what sometimes gets missed along the way there is closing the loop on the other end. Obviously, we can't interview, we can't speak with every single candidate, but when a job is closed, even following up at the end to say, sorry, we've selected another candidate. We appreciate your interest. Please continue to follow us and reach back out. I know from our recruitment processes that does make at least a certain degree of difference. We have repeat candidates applying for things. We also reach back out to them. So I think it's also sort of keeping, that communication going so that if you do see someone who could be a fit for a different position, being able to kind of reach out a little bit to them. So, I think making sure that communication is there, highlighting the benefits. We spoke about remote work earlier, I think in the chat, that was one change that I just made with our recent recruitments is sort of pushing that remote work experience to the top above the health benefits, because what we are seeing these days is that more people are interested in being able to have that flexibility, have that ability to work remotely. And it sometimes comes in above any sort of medical benefits as well. So really trying to highlight it. So we are a ways off in our attraction side of it, but we are starting to go there. We've recently built out our career page. So we've never had a career page before. Again, we've had the assets, we've had the information, but we've never really built it out. So we did start to do that. So I think, the main focus here is really sort of just taking that first step. I'll say, if you just stop and look at what you have been doing and what you do have, you'll realize you're a lot further along than you are. but you just have to take that first step to kind of see where we're going in the future.
Yeah, and to that point, in terms of the first step for the marketers on the call, you really need to treat HR as a programmatic department. If you think about it, when you're marketing a conference, you work with that department to set goals, define metrics, build a marketing plan to attract and retain attendees year over year. So it needs to be that same way with HR. That first step can be from either HR or marketing reaching out to the other to have those same conversations that you would have with your meetings department, with membership, with publishing. And so Maureen brought to my attention that we have not had a career page. And so I've been able to work with her and really get that built out. Also at the same time, in terms of, we started redoing our email structure in terms of emails that are on the page. And Maureen had this jobs 43252 at American Health. It was not meaningful. It didn't make any sense. And she was like, well, this is what IT gave me. And I was like, no. Like, I've already been working with IT and all these other email addresses. We're going to get one for HR that makes sense. And that's the first impression, is we need to make sure that works. And another piece of advice too is in terms of, from a marketing angle, is Glassdoor and Indeed and LinkedIn. Treat those as your web assets. At my last job, I had noticed that on Glassdoor, we had some negative reviews. And so I went down to HR and I said, hey, look, are you aware of this? And one, they weren't. So nobody was looking at these other web assets. And then two, told them, hey, what if we built out this page better? If we included our logo, our mission, our core values, our benefits, then we're controlling the narrative at the top of the page and everything else gets pushed down. And so it's really about treating HR like any other programmatic department from a marketing angle. And that's really where this employer branding is going to synergize when you do that. And now I think we're going to move on to the growth stage of the talent management lifecycle.
Yes. So, as we kind of move past that point in the cycle where your employees are integrating and onboarding in your association, this is a time when there's the greatest risk for dissonance if you are not, regularly refreshing the messaging around your employer brand. And so as employees are coming in and learning and growing and developing, is their experience in your organization in any way disconnected with their expectations and what they heard in that attract phase? So really important to be looking at ways that you can continue to bring the employer brand through the activities in this phase. And so this is a time where there's focus around clarity with goal setting. And, from an HR lens, certainly recommend that goal setting is aligned with team level and organization level priorities, so that folks understand their piece to the whole and that greater sense of purpose, which we know is so important. And certainly from a multi-gen standpoint, is what talent is looking for. This is the time that you're progress monitoring, you're having opportunities for feedback, both around performance and development. There's active coaching to be expected by your managers. And that overall there's career pathing, both talking about ways that skills can be developed to add depth and breadth to your role, but also opportunities for upward mobility in your association. And we share all of this in thinking about what, is expressed in the quote that you see on the slide, that it can cost an organization as much as 6 times more to hire externally than to build from within. So just really emphasizing the importance of the growth stage.
Right, and I can't, echo that enough, Lori, in terms of this whole concept around lemon law, right? So you have this idea to approach this employer, to apply, you go through a wonderful process to actually receive an offer. And now, the bloom is off the rose because you're in this particular, organization, and nothing that you're experiencing aligns with what you thought you were going to experience. And so cognitive dissonance is real here. And as much as organizations can seek to close the gap between what they're saying during the attraction process and what they're doing in the grow and value process, which we're going to talk about, is so very important. And so, the next thing that we wanted to focus on are some growth priorities in employer branding. And the first thing, that we wanted to really highlight is the need to communicate and communicate again. consistently communicating what the vision is, not assuming that everybody's on the same page and they get it. Communicating those strategic priorities, and as Lori said, helping employees understand, and this is exactly where you fit in the mix, and opening the door for them to also communicate about how they understand where they fit in the mix and things that they think might, be done differently from a feedback perspective. Also, making sure that all the messaging that is created and shared with staff is in full alignment with the mission, looking for anything that is incongruent with what the mission focuses on, with how the organization serves the communities that it's cultivating, and making sure that's reflective in the messaging that is shared within the employee space.
Yeah, it's so important. And, for marketing professionals on this call, you're hearing us emphasize this piece around clarity of strategic priorities, so making sure that there's deliberate time for collaborative goal setting between a direct report and a manager, because from an HR end, the research really speaks to this. Gallup put out research to really emphasize that what employees are looking for from an employer is role clarity, is accountability. And so particularly in current times where there's, actively, going to be and is a war for talent, to make sure that from a branding standpoint, employees do see and feel, and it's alive and well, the ability to have clarity around their roles, understand what's expected of them, again, both from a performance as well as a career professional development end, and that they're having opportunities for feedback, both with their direct report, at peer levels, across the organization, and upward. And if this is genuinely in place currently in your association as part of your culture, marketing and HR want to be talking about this and really spotlighting this, because it speaks to what, from an HR end, we know candidates are looking for in their next opportunities.
Right. And from that during and post phase, those are opportunities to really highlight the success of some of the employee experiences. And, that means that you're actively monitoring employee engagement, but you're also working to engage your employees. And one way that you can do that during the during phase is to consider something like a brand ambassadors program. Nonprofit HR has a brand ambassadors program where we do engage employees who are excited and interested, and they are actively engaged on social media to share in the distribution of messaging and priorities that the organization is focused on. And this not only helps when it comes to spotlighting some of our priorities and some of our programming, but it also helps to spotlight our career campaigns when we're seeking to attract certain types of talent, when we're rolling out new roles, and we really know this is going to be a heavy lift in terms of finding the right talent. Those brand ambassadors have become essential to our communication strategy. And that's a way that you're also able to maximize and tie back to the advertising dollars that, as we all mentioned, is, so very precious and so very few. And so we're going to hear next from AHLA on where they are moving toward when it comes to their grow phase of the employee life cycle.
I think when we look at our grow phase, it's a continuous process. But like I mentioned earlier, I think this is actually where we are very strong in grow and value phase. We know our employer brand. We focus on professional development and growth. We foster an environment that encourages creativity and motivation, and we create an environment that celebrates individual differences and recognizes the benefits of diversity. And so when we look at these sort of three key areas, everything that we do internally, we're trying to build towards that. And we're also trying to make sure that we're on the right track. We do surveys. We've started climate surveys probably about 6 years ago where we go and we ask them. We get all the feedback from our staff to find out where are we. And then once we do that, we follow up with them. We go over the results. We have workout sessions with both sort of senior leadership and all staff to sort of determine what is it that we can do better. From one of our earlier surveys, communication was an issue, as I'm sure it is in most organizations. And we think we're communicating to you, but sometimes we're not. So sort of working with staff to say, okay, what is it that you're missing? And then let's implement that. Let's try to grow on that. And then following up. So, we do these climate surveys now every 2 years or so to continually check in and see where are we with this. When we look at career development or professional development, that's always been sort of a key part of AHLA, not only in the mission of who we are and providing education to, the health law community, but internally providing that professional development to our employees as well. And so one of our, most recent initiatives that's going to be rolling out this year is really looking to be more deliberate in how we develop and how we deliver our professional development. We're building out career paths for, all our different areas so that we could have an employee who is interested in a certain type of career growth, and we're able to provide that to them. Similarly, creating a leadership development program in-house so that we don't necessarily always need to go outside of it. I think earlier we talked about how, growing internally is a lot better than external and having to pull from outside. That's something that we've been focusing on for many years. We've started our strategic workforce plan probably about 4 or 5 years ago, which is looking at specifically that. What do we need in the 5-year term, 10-year term? What do we need now? And what can we do to provide staff with that? So we continue to sort of do that. A lot of these things are heavy lifts. And I think it's both a matter of taking that step forward, but also being disciplined in it. One thing that I always say to folks is please do not do a climate survey. Please do not survey your staff if you don't intend to make a change. If you do, it's the worst possible thing that you can do for your organization, because what's the point of getting the feedback if you're not going to do anything? So we make sure that we're sort of taking that feedback. We're being able to be nimble and pivot where we need to, including sort of the pulse surveys. So that's just something that we're starting this year, having quarterly pulse surveys to focus on a more specific area. So for instance, like I said, we are building up our training, building up our diversity and inclusion efforts. And so our first pulse survey will really focus on that area, so we can get a little more immediate feedback instead of every 2 years on what we're doing, and it just allows us to pivot a little bit more. So we definitely are good on the inside of things. What, from my perspective, and what we need to look at and make sure that we're doing is also from the external side of it. So feedback is easily accessible right now, good, bad, and indifferent. And like I said, with the talent, we haven't necessarily been putting our message out there as much. And so we really need to kind of look on that side as well to the external feedback that we hear.
Yeah, and just a quick comment from the marketing lens is, marketing can help connect the dots. And so marketing is responsible for messaging all over the place in terms of that buyer's journey and getting somebody from start to finish into what you want to do. What I had noticed on our website was, our mission had one thing, we had a diversity statement and we had core values, and none of them really aligned exactly. And so bringing that to Maureen's attention and to our CEO's attention of these are the things, there's a disconnect in the messaging, and that needs to be fixed so that somebody understands from start to finish who is AHLA. And actually our core values were not even on our website. And so that was something that as part of the employer pages, we're building into the website to make sure that we're completing that message from start to finish.
So as we head into the last phase of the talent management cycle, we classify this as the value stage, how employees have opportunities to be recognized and rewarded, what the benefits, leave, compensation offerings are, overall wellness and well-being offerings that all speaks to retaining your high quality talent. And so we'll spotlight a few examples of some of the initiatives tied to the value stage. Items like spotlighting your employees' stories on your website and spotlighting how they're leaning into your organizational values. Again, bringing your organizational values through the talent management cycle. A great opportunity if you're an association that currently uses stay conversations with your current employees to understand how you can, fully utilize their skills, their overall experience and satisfaction with your organization. It's another opportunity to really ask the question and to hear from them of how their experience is matching their perceptions and expectations in working for your association. And then suggestions, recommendations, such as really developing what we're classifying as your alumni or your legacy network. So thinking about ways as folks voluntarily exit your organization, they can naturally stay connected through newsletters that you're already sharing out, being able to receive press releases that, again, are going out to your community. So not requiring an additional lift of new collateral, but keeping them connected, as well as sharing out your job postings. So again, just the power of networks. And then lastly, just spotlighting just the benefit of inserting 1 to 2 additional questions into your standard exit interview guide to ask the question of, how do you describe our organizational culture based on your experience here? And ultimately, would you refer our association to a friend? And being able to collect that data and share that out in meetings across HR and marketing, and assess that data and determine, is that going to change, revise, or refresh your employer branding?
So we'll have a moment to hear some final thoughts from AHLA on what they're doing in the value space of the talent management lifecycle before we move to talk briefly about some tools that we have provided that we are going to be sharing with you after this webinar.
Yeah, so again, I think we do a good job of getting the feedback and being able to pivot when it comes to sort of benefits and where we sit in that employer brand and what our employees want. One thing I'll point out that we've found is, trying to be as transparent as possible too. So our focus and our brand really goes around professional development. We are a small association. We don't necessarily have a huge tier level of titles and structures, but we still want our folks to remember that, we're focused on their career. And so, we put everything we can into it for the idea that they may come back. So it's the idea of you're investing in these employees and to the idea of an alumni network, that they may leave, they may have positive things to say about you, but also they may come back when that opportunity arises again. I often use a old HR manager that I had who worked at one place, left where I met her and returned right back because of, the quality of that organization that she was with. So I think it's really a matter of sort of leveraging sort of the transparency and what you have currently in order to be able to bring that message out and continue to follow up with, those former employees too. I think we don't have a formal process, but we've got long tenured folks here. We've got an average tenure of about 6 years. And so there's friendships that are built over time. And so we have folks who are still talking to the same employees they worked with 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it happens to be. And so when an opportunity comes up, we're able to, reach back into it, but trying to be a little more deliberate and leverage that a little bit more, I think is an area we may look to kind of shift into.
From the marketing perspective, again, think of what you're doing on the membership side and how that might apply to the employee side. And one of the initiatives that Maureen and I worked on this year was pronouns. And I wanted to add pronouns into our member directory to allow members to be able to select and show that we're an inclusive organization. It has to do with the rebrand that we did last year that opened it up to anybody who touches health law. We want them to find a home here. But then asking Maureen, is this something that we can add to our signature lines? And how awesome is that for her to be able to, with a new hire, to say, oh, can we get your pronouns? Because we'd like to include that in our email signature. It's powerful. It's we want your authentic self, whatever it may be. And we value that. And we want to highlight that.
And so coming out of today's conversation, we recognize that schedules from marketing to HR are very full and very dynamic. And so what we wanted to do was to support you in seeing how some of these initiatives and recommendations can be shaped as far as making them more digestible. So we've classified the activities as far as light, moderate, heavy, meaning from a resource planning end. So from both thinking about time and capacity, as well as any potential budget planning needs, have shared where we would suggest you take a look for planning purposes and really suggest that there be an opportunity, ideally no less than quarterly, for marketing and HR to come together and to meet and to be thoughtful around some of the initiatives that they can move forward in the association. And those that are targeted as light, maybe some of those low-hanging fruits that within the next few weeks you can begin to implement. And so we'll be pulling this chart out and sharing it as a handout following the conversation today. We've also drafted a sample meeting agenda to help support the planning, and that will come as well. And then really excited to turn the call to Atogatha to share more about an upcoming coaching experience that we think you'll find value in.
So thanks for that, Lori. We knew we were going to be covering a lot of content today. There was a lot that we wanted to go through, and we knew that might limit our Q&A session. And so we wanted to make sure that we opened and created space for additional discussion around employer branding and where your organization is and where you're wanting to go, and to provide an opportunity for you to ask questions and to just thought partner with others on the call who might have an opportunity to just help you strengthen the missing links that may be a part of your employer brand and how it is in alignment or misalignment with your corporate brand. So we want to, let you know that there is an opportunity to join us on Monday, June 7th from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. And we're just going to spend some time just talking and just bring your questions. I would encourage you to bring your HR and also marketing heads. And let's just talk. Let's talk about where you are and where you're wanting to go, and whatever resources we're able to share, we will with you. And hopefully we'll be able to help you take additional steps to create success. I think the greatest point, to remember also is just that, the employer brand is never really what we say. So we spend a lot of time creating messaging, creating all sorts of visual aspects and so forth. But at the end of the day, the decision, the perspective, the opinion is still in the mind of your talent. They are the ones who are going to share the stories. They're the ones who are perceiving and experiencing the brand. And they're the ones who are going to talk about it, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, as Maureen said. And so this is so very important to remember. And that's why it's so very important just to make sure that you're consistently going back and looking at all of your messaging to make sure that it reflects reality. You all are aware of the fact checkers that are out there right now, and they will call you out on the spot if it's inconsistent or incongruent with their experiences. We also wanted to highlight quickly that ACHQ also offers some employer branding tools. So don't forget about what they have to offer. And this slide will be included in the package that you're sent out so that you can reach out to them for the things that you may need to advance your employer brand. I don't know if we have one or two quick questions that we can take, but if you have a question, I think Wanda can take you off mute and allow you to share your question really quickly.
Hi, I just have a quick question about examples. Is there any good examples that you guys can share in regards to that, the management story or the management change over time?
And so can you clarify your question just a little bit?
Someone who is really doing good branding, whether it be social media, a career center, whether it be an applicant tracking portal, kind of conveying those benefits, just looking to see an example for what we can be, what we can be doing.
Would you like to take that one, Stefan or Lori?
Well, I would say we're not quite the example yet, but we hope to be. I'm not sure of any specific examples. If you look at major companies, obviously the Boeings, the Googles, it's great. But if you're a small nonprofit, you sort of have to scale back a little bit and also just figure out where you can do it. Maybe we will be an example, in the coming year as we start to build it out. But I'm not sure if you guys have examples from the clients you work with.
Absolutely. I think, Lori, leading educators may be a great example to share a little bit about.
Yeah, we're very pleased to partner with Leading Educators, an amazing education-based nonprofit headquartered in New Orleans, but of course, as many organizations have virtual operations and they work across the country, they do a wonderful job of really bringing their core values, the way in which their policies are based in equity and justice, as well as their core competencies to their career page and to even their employee bio and descriptions. And so they do a nice job of also adding, beyond just stating benefits on a career page, really blending in culture and benefits. So they certainly are a nonprofit organization that we certainly would spotlight.
Thanks, Lori. And we're just at our time. We want to honor the time commitment that we've shared today with you all. We want to thank you so much for showing up. You will receive these slides from us, and I believe that you will also receive the recording recording in the very near future. Our contact information will be included in what you receive, and we encourage you to reach out if you have any questions. Feel free to send me an email if you want to come to that group coaching session. We hope to see you there, and we just wish you a happy rest of your afternoon and a peaceful Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.